I stood in the middle of the barn and looked up at the lights. Dad had always said a room could feel honest if you lit it right, and for one impossible second, with the strings glowing warm across the ceiling beams, I felt him there beside me. Too low, he'd said the first time we hung them. They look fine, I'd told him. Fine is for motels. Raise the left side. Tonight the left side was perfect. The whole place looked like a promise trying to stay alive. Fresh wood, old iron hardware, polished floors, new glass in the windows. Dad had rebuilt himself 2 winters ago, when the doctors were still using words like manageable and aggressive in the same sentence. You worked anyway. I worked with him. We called it the wedding barn before I had even proposed. I took my phone out and framed the shot carefully. The lights draped overhead like warm stars. The dance floor gleamed. Beyond the open doors, the fields were black and still. It should have felt like a beginning. I called Colette. It rang 6 times. Then her voicemail. Hey, it's me. I'm at the barn. I finished the lights. You should see this. Call me back. I tried again. Same result. I sent her the photo instead. Me, look. Another message. Me, we did it. That one stayed on the screen after I sent it, and I stared at the words longer than I should have. We. Not Dad and me. Not me alone. Me and Colette. The life I had been building toward ever since Dad handed me a rusted pry bar and said, if you are going to marry someone, build something that can hold people. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Colette, pretty? I looked at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed, are you coming by? I erased it. Typed again. Me, wish you were here. I erased that too. Instead, I locked the barn, killed the breaker, and stood in the dark for a second while the last of the warmth drained out of the room. The drive back to the apartment took 23 minutes. I spent all of them rehearsing explanations that made me feel less lonely. Maybe she was with Vivian. Maybe her phone was buried in her purse. Maybe pretty was all she had time for. By the time I unlocked our door, I almost believed myself. The apartment was empty. No lamp on in the living room. No music. No shoes by the door except mine. I set my keys down and said, hello, just to hear a voice even if it had to be my own. I made coffee I did not want, then poured it out cold at 11:30. I sat on the couch. I got up. I checked the time. I checked my phone. Nothing. At 12:14 I called Vivian. She answered on the 3rd ring. Aaron. Hey, sorry. Did Colette end up with you tonight? Pause. Too small to accuse. Too long to miss. No, she said. Why? My stomach tightened. She said she might be. She didn't call me. Oh. I swallowed. Okay. Aaron, is everything all right? Yeah. I just thought maybe I had the plan wrong. You want me to call her? No. Too fast. No, it's fine. Thanks, Viv. I hung up and stared at the dark television until I could see my reflection in it. I looked tired. Older than 30. Older than I had any right to feel. When the lock finally turned, it was 12:47. Colette walked in carrying her heels in one hand and her purse in the other. You're awake, she said. Yeah. She flicked on the kitchen light and blinked at me. Why are you sitting in the dark? I could ask you the same thing. She set her purse down. I was out. I can see that. Don't start. I'm not starting. I'm asking. Her jaw tightened. I was with Vivian. The lie was so calm it almost made me doubt my own phone call. Vivian? I said. Yes. All night. She crossed her arms. What is this? It's a question. It's interrogation. You came home after midnight. So I called you twice. My phone died. You texted me 40 minutes after I sent you the barn picture. And then nothing. She looked away first. Just for a second. Aaron, I was with my sister. Why are you doing this? Because you smell like someone else, I thought. Not perfume. Cologne. Sharp and expensive and wrong. Instead I said, I wanted to show you the barn tonight. She exhaled. I said it was pretty. That was the whole reply. What did you want, Aaron? A sonnet? I flinched before I could stop myself. She saw it. Her face softened for half a breath. Look, I'm tired. Can we not do this right now? I spent 6 hours hanging lights for a wedding that's 8 weeks away. And I appreciate that. Do you? Yes. It doesn't feel like it. She picked up her purse again. I'm taking a shower. Colette. What? I nearly said I called Vivian. I nearly said you are lying to me. Instead I said, nothing. She stood there another second, waiting for me to either trust her or challenge her. I did what I had been doing for months. I made it easy. Good night, she said. Good night. The bathroom door closed. Water started a minute later. I sat on the edge of the couch and pressed my palms together until they hurt. When she came to bed, I kept my eyes closed and pretended sleep had claimed me first. After a while, her breathing evened out beside me. I turned toward the ceiling, unlocked my phone, and looked at the photo again. The barn glowed patient in the dark. I built this for us. But lately, us feels like a word only I am using now. Saturday morning, I made coffee alone while Colette slept behind the bedroom door. Sunlight hit the counter. My mug steamed. Hers stayed upside down in the rack, clean and untouched. 2 years kept circling in my head. We met at a design expo downtown. I reached for a brochure. She reached for it too. I said, "You can have it." She smiled and said, "You didn't even look at it." I said, "I was being polite." She laughed. "Then I definitely want it less." We skipped 2 panels, drank bad coffee, and kept talking. 18 months later in the barn, I asked, "Marry me?" She kissed me and said, "Obviously yes." I had called that certainty. This morning it felt more like evidence I had ignored in reverse. The canceled dinners. The new password on her phone. The way she tipped the screen away from me and smiled too fast. The call she took in the hallway. The way she flinched if I touched her shoulders from behind, like I had interrupted a thought she did not want me inside. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Then again. I did not go look. I told myself that meant I trusted her. Maybe it just meant I was afraid of being right. At 10, Theo texted, "You still coming?" I wrote back, "Yeah. Leaving now." He opened the door with a spatula and said, "Come in. Save me. Naomi has started putting fruit in eggs." I said, "Fruit does not belong in eggs." He pointed at me. "See? Marriage has not destroyed his judgment yet." Naomi called from the kitchen, "Ignore him. He's upset because peaches have range." I said, "Eggs do not need range." Theo grinned. That is the most errant sentence I have ever heard. Usually their house relaxed me. That morning I felt like a guest in my own skin. We ate on the back deck. Theo talked about a contractor who vanished halfway through their bathroom remodel. I nodded when he paused. Naomi watched me over her mug until Theo's phone rang. He looked at the screen and sighed. "My brother. If I don't answer, he'll think I've died." He stood up. "Do not let her put berries in anything while I'm gone." Naomi waited until the door shut, then touched my wrist. "Can you stay out here a minute?" I said, "That sounds ominous." She said, "It is." My stomach tightened. "Is this about Colette?" She held my eyes and said, "Yes." I said, "Why?" She breathed in slowly. "Because I saw something 3 days ago, and I need to tell you before you marry her." I did not speak. She pulled out her phone. I was downtown meeting a client. I was across from the cafe on 5th. Colette was inside with a man. I asked, "Vivian?" She shook her head. "No." I said, "A coworker?" Even then, I heard myself doing it, defending her before I had even seen anything. Naomi's face softened. I thought that for about 10 seconds too. Then she unlocked her screen and held the phone out to me. The photo was taken through the window from across the street. It was clear enough. Colette sat in a corner booth. The man sat beside her, not across from her, one arm along the back of the seat like he belonged there. Dark hair. Gray coat. A face I had never seen. She was laughing. Real laughing. Their hands were linked on the table between 2 cups. I stared until the picture blurred, then sharpened again. Naomi said, "I'm sorry." I gave the phone back because my fingers had gone numb. I asked, "Did they kiss?" She said, "No." I asked, "Did they look like they wanted to?" She hesitated. I sat down hard with my coffee still in my hand. It had gone cold. Naomi crouched in front of me and said, "You do not have to decide anything today." I laughed once and said, "That is exactly what I was planning not to do." She said, "Aaron, you are not crazy." That nearly undid me. I said, "I keep telling myself there has to be an explanation." She said, "There might be one." I asked, "Do you believe that?" She looked at me for a long second and said, "No." Theo opened the door and looked between us. "Should I give you a minute?" he asked. I stood too fast. "No. I'm fine." He frowned. "You do not look fine." Naomi said, "Let him breathe." Theo came over and squeezed my shoulder once. "Whatever it is, call me later." I said, "Yeah." I stayed another 15 minutes because leaving immediately would have made everything too visible. Theo talked about plumbing. I nodded. Naomi kept pretending not to watch me break apart in slow motion. At the door she said, "Call me if you need me." I said, I won't know what I need until after it happens. She said, then call me then. The drive home blurred into turns I barely remember. I remember only the photo. Her hand in his. Her body turned toward him like gravity had picked a side. When I pulled into the driveway, the apartment windows were bright. She was awake now. Probably making tea. Probably moving through the kitchen in bare feet, innocent in every way that mattered if you had not seen what I had seen. I shut off the engine and stayed where I was. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. I watched our second-floor window and imagined walking upstairs, holding up Naomi's phone and saying, "Who is he?" I was not ready to confront her. Not yet. I wanted one more hour of ignorance, even poisoned. But the ground under my certainty had cracked. I could feel it running through every late night, every easy lie, every hollow little text. I stayed in the driveway and understood something awful. I was already falling and I finally knew why. I stopped trying to catch her. Instead I started watching. There is a difference. Catching is desperate. Watching is patient. And patience was the only thing I had left that hadn't been borrowed from a version of myself I no longer fully recognized. The name appeared 3 days in a row. I was not looking for it. I was making dinner when her phone lit up on the counter beside the cutting board. The notification vanished in 2 seconds, but not before I saw it. One letter. M. She crossed the kitchen, checked the screen, then slid the phone face down and said, "What are we eating?" I said, "Pasta." She said, "Good." And that was everything. 2 seconds. One letter. The entire axis of my attention permanently shifted. The next evening she took a call in the bathroom. The door wasn't fully closed. I wasn't standing at it, I was in the hallway putting clean towels in the linen closet 3 feet away. Her voice was low enough to be private but not low enough to disappear. I heard, "I know. I know that." Then, "Not right now, just not right now." Then a long pause. When she came out, she was smiling at her phone like it was something warm in her hands. She looked up, saw me, and the smile adjusted into something else. "Vivian," she said. She hadn't said anything. I hadn't asked. She offered it anyway, which told me everything. 3 nights later, she showered after dinner. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter. It buzzed once. Twice. I looked from across the room. I told myself I wouldn't cross to it. I was already moving. I looked at the screen. "I miss you. Tonight was everything. He doesn't deserve you." I read it once. I read it again. I read it a third time, slowly, the way you read something when you are trying to locate the version of it that doesn't destroy you. There was no version. I stood very still. Not shock, not rage. Something colder. The kind of cold that comes when a thing you suspected finally stops being a suspicion and becomes a fact, and your body understands that nothing from this moment forward will be arranged the same way. My hands were completely still. I photographed the screen. Sent it to myself. Set her phone back in the exact position. Same angle, same distance from the counter edge. I crossed to the sink and stood there until the water in the shower shut off. When she came into the kitchen in her robe, hair damp, she picked up her phone and checked it. Her face didn't change. She had read whatever she needed to read and buried it somewhere I wasn't allowed. She said, "Are you okay? You look pale." I said, "Tired." She said, "Early night then." I said, "Yeah." In bed, she fell asleep in 12 minutes. I lay beside her and thought about my father. He told me once, I was maybe 16, sullen about something I cannot remember anymore, "Aaron, any man can endure something. That's not the question. The question is what you refuse to accept. That's where your worth lives." I had written it off as fatherly overstatement at the time, the kind of thing you file under things you'll understand later. I was understanding it now. I was lying in the dark beside a woman who had let another man tell her the person next to her didn't deserve her. I was memorizing the sound of her breathing like it was information I would need to survive something. I was done enduring. I was not yet ready to refuse. But I was closer. The next morning, I drove to Dean's auto shop. He was underneath a truck when I walked in, boots visible from the garage door. I said, "Dean?" He rolled out on the slider, squinted at me and said, "You look terrible." I said, "I need a favor." He sat up and pulled a rag from his back pocket. "How bad?" I said, "I need you to find out who Marcus Hale is." He looked at me for a long second. He didn't ask how I knew the name. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask if I was sure. Dean has known me since we were 11, which means he knows the difference between me asking a casual question and me asking the kind that has already cost me something. He said, "Give me 24 hours. I said, "Thank you." He said, "Don't thank me yet." I said, "I'm not thanking you for finding something. I'm thanking you for not asking questions. He stood, looked at me for another beat and said, "You eating?" I said, "No." He said, "Eat something." That was all. I drove to the barn from there. The lights were still strung. I had not touched anything since that first night. The wood floors still smelled like the linseed oil and cedar Dad had been particular about. The iron fixtures he'd sourced from an estate sale 3 counties over. His handwriting was on a beam in the back corner, a measurement, a calculation, something practical. I never covered it. I was never going to cover it. I stood where I had stood that first night with my phone raised and the lights glowing and hope still intact above me. I said it quietly to no one and to him at once. I built this for someone who doesn't exist. My voice didn't break. That surprised me. The lights hung patient and warm, the same as always. Honest like he'd said. A room lit right. Everything ready for a day that was beginning to feel like someone else's story. I turned off the lights and locked the door. Then I drove home to wait. Dean called me at 6:12. "I found him," he said. I was in the parking lot outside the grocery store, engine running, hands on the wheel. "Tell me." Marcus Hale. 31. Guitarist. Plays local sets, records session work, disappears for months at a time. He dated Colette in college. I closed my eyes. Dean kept going. He left her 5 years ago. No warning from what I could piece together. Moved to Nashville for a tour. Came back to the city 4 months ago. And the last 3 months? Pause. I asked around. People have seen them together. Cafe on 5th. A bar on Morton. A hotel lounge downtown. More than once. I let that sit between us. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah." "You sound angry." "I am angry." "For me or at me?" "Both," he said. "For you because this is rotten. At you because I think you've known enough for a while." "I know." "What are you going to do?" I looked through the windshield at people pushing carts under fading light. "I'm going home." "Want me there?" "No." "You sure?" "No." "But I'm going anyway. Call me if it gets bad." "It already is." "Yeah," he said softly. "I know." When I got home, Colette was at the counter slicing lemons. "Hey," she said. "You're late. I need you to sit down." She looked at me, then at my face, and the knife stopped moving. "Aaron, what happened?" "Sit." She sat across from me at the kitchen table. I took out my phone. Then I placed a printed copy of Naomi's photo beside it. She looked at the screenshot first. Then the photo. Then me. Her face lost all color. For a second I thought she might lie. Say it was old. Say it meant nothing. Instead she whispered, "How much do you know?" "Enough." Tears filled her eyes immediately. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "How did you want me to find out?" She shook her head. "Please don't do that." "Do what?" "Talk like you're already gone." "Who is he?" I asked. She stared at the photo. "Marcus." "I know his name." "I loved him once," she said. "He left. He came back. And you went with him." She covered her mouth. "I thought I was over it." "And me?" "I love you." "You keep saying that like it changes anything." "It doesn't." "No. It doesn't." She looked down at the screenshot. "That text was stupid." "Was it wrong?" She didn't answer. "Naomi saw you holding his hand." "I know." "You know because you did it." "I know because I remember it." Silence sat between us. Then she said, "I was scared." "Of what?" "Of making the wrong choice." I stood up. "You already made it," I said. She stood too. "That's not what I mean." "What do you mean?" She was crying openly now. "I just need 2 years." I thought I'd misheard her. "What?" "2 years," she said. "To finish things with him. To get closure. Then I'll be fully yours. I promise." I stared at her. 8 weeks from the wedding. 2 years from my life. "Say something," she whispered. 2 years. I know how it sounds. Do you? Please listen. I'm listening. I don't want to lose you. But you want time with him. It's not like that. What is it like? It's unfinished. I laughed once without humor. And what am I? Storage? A safe place to wait while you decide if I am enough. No. She reached for me. Aaron, that's not fair. Fair? I'm being honest now. After the lies. She grabbed my arm. Marcus means nothing. This is about closure, not love. I removed her hand gently. You asked for 2 years. That tells me everything I need to know about where I stand. Aaron, please. No. She stared at me. You can't walk out over this, she said. Over this. I made a mistake. You built a second relationship inside our first one and asked me to wait while you finished deciding. I said I choose you. After 2 years. You are twisting this. No. I'm finally hearing it straight. I picked up the screenshot and the photo. Where are you going? She asked. Out. When are you coming back? Not tonight. She followed me to the door. We can fix it. I opened it. You should have wanted to fix it before I had to prove I knew. Then I left. My brother Dean opened the door before I knocked. He took one look at me and stepped aside. Spare rooms made up. I sat on the bed. He stayed in the doorway. You want to talk? He asked. She asked for 2 years. He blinked. What? 2 years to finish things with him. Get closure. Then she'd be fully mine. Dean let out one breath. Jesus. Yeah. You leaving her? Yes. He nodded. Good. After he went to bed, I lay awake in the spare room and saw the barn as clearly as if I were standing in it. The beams. The lights. The floor Dad and I sanded twice because he said a place built for vows should never feel unfinished. I had spent days asking myself whether the wedding would still happen there. Lying in Dean's dark house, I understood that was the wrong question. The venue was never hers to ruin. If I walked away from it too, I would be handing her damage to the only promise my father finished there. My father gave his last strength to that room. I gave mine too. It was built from work, memory, and love that meant something, even if the woman I chose did not. I sat up, looked into the dark, and said it out loud so I could hear the shape of my life changing. I'm going to use the venue. Then I said the rest. But Colette will not be the bride. I moved out in 3 days. Day 1 I packed clothes. Day 2 books and tools. Day 3, everything that had my name on it and nothing that didn't. Colette stood in the hallway while I carried boxes past her. You're really doing this, she said. Yes. You don't have to rush. I'm not rushing. You are. This is dramatic. I set a box down. You asked for 2 years. I said that in panic. You said it clearly. She pressed her lips together. You're going to regret this. I already regret enough. Dean helped me load the truck. He didn't speak while she watched from the doorway. When the last box was in, she said, "Call me when you calm down." I closed the door instead. Dean's spare room smelled like motor oil and laundry detergent. Temporary. I needed temporary. I found a studio near my office within a week. 1 room, 1 window, 1 narrow closet. Quiet. I signed the lease without hesitation. I didn't post anything online. No statements. No explanations. Instead, I opened the wedding folder on my laptop. Caterer first. Hi, this is Aaron Whitmore. I need to cancel the August booking. Pause. I'm so sorry. Is everything all right? No. We'll refund what we can. Thank you. Click. Florist next. I won't be needing the arrangements. Oh. I had just finalized your peony order. I'm sorry. It happens, she said gently. Take care of yourself. Click. Each call felt like a small funeral. But with every cancellation my lungs felt clearer. The DJ didn't even ask questions. Happens all the time, man, he said. Better now than later. I almost laughed at that. Then I called Jackie Lamb, our event coordinator. Aaron, she answered brightly. I was meaning to follow up about the revised timeline. Revised timeline? Yes, for the postponement. What postponement? Silence. Aaron. Colette called me 2 weeks ago. She said you both were thinking about pushing the wedding back 6 months. 6 months. Not 2 years. But the same instinct. Buying time. No, I said carefully. We were not thinking about that. Oh my God, Jackie breathed. She said you were overwhelmed. I assumed you knew. I didn't. I'm so sorry. It's fine. It wasn't. She wanted to hold the date tentatively, Jackie continued, voice small now. I told her we could shift vendors if you both agreed. Did she sound unsure? Another pause. She sounded conflicted. Thank you, I said. After I hung up, I sat at my small kitchen counter and stared at the wall. 6 months. She was already rearranging my life without me. Already creating distance before I had evidence to justify it. I felt something shift again, not pain, not anger. Clarity. I drove to the barn that evening. The sun was low, cutting gold through the open doors. Dust moved in slow beams of light. I didn't turn the string lights on. I just sat on one of the folding chairs stacked against the wall. This was supposed to be it, I said out loud. My voice echoed softly. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Aaron. The wedding's off. Silence. Not shock. Not interruption. Just space. Are you all right? She asked finally. I will be. What happened? She wanted time. With someone else. Another silence. Heavier this time. Oh, sweetheart, she said. I'm not asking for advice. I know. I just needed you to hear it from me. The barn isn't going anywhere, she said. And neither are you. I swallowed. It feels like it's collapsing, I admitted. It's not, she said firmly. It's standing exactly where your father left it. Solid. So are you. I let that sit in me. Come for dinner this week, she added. No wedding talk. Okay. After I hung up, I leaned back in the chair and stared at the beams Dad rebuilt by hand. The structure wasn't cracked. The foundation wasn't shifting. Only the story I had placed inside it was wrong. My phone buzzed. Vivian. I almost didn't answer. Aaron, she said immediately, her voice thick. I'm so sorry. For what? For lying. For covering for her. I thought she'd stop. You knew. I knew she was seeing him. I didn't know how far. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to betray her, she said. But I've been betraying you. You chose your sister. I chose wrong. Silence hung between us. Marcus is already pulling away, she said quietly. He doesn't want anything serious. He never did. I felt nothing. She's losing you, Vivian continued. And she's losing him. I waited for the satisfaction. The vindication. The anger. Nothing came. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Take care of her, I said. You don't hate her? I don't know what I feel. After I ended the call, I sat in the barn until dusk turned everything blue. Colette was losing both men. The thought didn't comfort me. It didn't hurt either. That scared me more than anything. Pain meant I still cared in the way I used to. This was different. This was quiet. I stood, walked to the center of the floor, and imagined the room filled with people. Music, laughter, vows spoken honestly. The venue wasn't cursed. It wasn't ruined. It was waiting. Not for her. For something real. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I refused to accept. I was sanding down a rough patch on one of the barn doors when I heard gravel crunch behind me. I didn't turn right away. Hi, Colette said. I kept the sander running for another second, then switched it off. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. You shouldn't be here, I said, still facing the door. I didn't know where else to go. I turned then. She looked smaller somehow. Thinner. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed red like she hadn't slept in days. What do you want, Colette? She swallowed. Marcus left. I waited. He just left. Packed up. Said he needed to figure things out. Her voice broke. No goodbye. No explanation. I leaned the sander on the workbench. I'm sorry he did that to you. She blinked at me. That's it. What else would you like me to say? She stepped closer, hands shaking. I made the worst mistake of my life. The wind moved through the open barn doors behind her. I thought I needed closure, she said. I thought if I didn't try, I'd always wonder. And now I know. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He was never going to stay. You would have. I folded my arms. You knew that before. I was scared of how stable you were, she said. You were forever. He was unfinished. I confused chaos with passion. I didn't interrupt. I chose wrong, she whispered. I chose wrong and I lost you. What are you asking me for? She looked up at me like I was the last thing holding her upright. Another chance. The word landed between us. I'll do anything, she rushed. Therapy. Counseling. I'll earn back your trust. I'll prove it. I stayed quiet. I love you, she said. I never stopped. I took a slow breath. Then I asked, if Marcus hadn't left, if he had stayed and wanted you, would you be standing here right now? She froze. Her lips parted. No sound came out. That pause was small. But it was honest. I nodded slowly. That's what I needed to know. It's not that simple, she whispered. It is. I'm choosing you now. After he didn't choose you. That's not fair. It's accurate. She grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I gently removed her hand. I don't hate you. She stared at me through tears. I understand what you were chasing, I said. You thought you lost something. You wanted to see if it still fit. It didn't, she said quickly. But you asked me to wait while you decided if I was enough. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And I am not a waiting room. She covered her mouth, sobbing. You didn't lose me because of Marcus, I continued. You lost me because you made me optional. Her shoulders shook. For a second I felt the old instinct, to comfort, to fix. I let it pass. So that's it, she asked finally. That's it. She looked around the barn. The beams. The light coming through the high windows. I ruined this, she said. No, I replied. You ruined us. This still stands. She nodded once and walked back to her car. I didn't follow. An hour later my phone rang. Ray Davenport. Aaron, he said, clipped and controlled. We need to talk. I don't think we do. My daughter is beside herself. She came here. She told me. You turned her away. She asked me to wait 2 years while she explored another man. That's not how she framed it. That's how she said it. He exhaled sharply. People make mistakes. She made choices. You're throwing away 2 years. She tried to buy 6 more months before I even found out, I said. Did you know that? Silence. You have to consider the bigger picture, he pressed. Family reputation. Deposits. The barn. The barn isn't a bargaining chip. You're being emotional. No, I said evenly. I'm being clear. Aaron. No amount of reputation management changes what it means that your daughter asked me to pause my life while she decided if I was enough. He didn't respond. I wish her well, I added. But this is over. I ended the call before he could try again. Pastor Gene Holloway arrived just before sunset. He walked through the barn slowly, hands clasped behind his back. I heard, he said. News travels. He nodded. Your father built this place with his hands. I know. He built it because he believed in things that last. I looked up at the beams we had sanded together. You'll know what to do with it when the time is right, he said. That sounds like advice. It's not, he replied gently. It's trust. He left without saying anything else. As I stepped outside, a truck pulled up near the fence line. A woman climbed out, dark hair tied back, boots dusty from work. You must be Aaron, she called. Elena Voss? She nodded and offered her hand. Landscape architect. We shook. I've reviewed the property plans, she said, scanning the grounds. The structure's strong. The land just needs intention. It was my father's project, I said. She walked into the barn and tilted her head back, studying the beams the way I always did. Whoever restored this, she said quietly, understood reverence. The word caught me off guard. He did, I said. She gave a small nod, not sentimental, just respectful. We'll make the outside worthy of the inside, she said. It was professional. Brief. But when she looked at the barn one more time before leaving, she looked at it like it mattered. The same way I did. And that stayed with me. 6 months later, I stood in the center of the barn again. The string lights I'd hung that first night still glowed above the beams. The floors were polished. The new landscaping framed the open doors with clean lines and low stone borders Elena had designed with quiet precision. This wasn't a wedding. It was a gathering. Lorraine stood near the entrance greeting people like she owned the place, which in some ways she did. Dean was arguing with Theo about whether Dad would have approved of the new gravel path. He would have hated the color, Theo said. He would have loved the drainage, Dean shot back. Naomi laughed. He would have said you were both wrong. Pastor Gene moved slowly through the room, hands folded behind his back the way he always did, pausing to look up at the beams like he was reading scripture written in wood grain. I stepped up beside my mother. You okay? She asked quietly. Yeah. She studied my face. You look lighter. I feel lighter. She squeezed my hand once. He'd be proud. I swallowed but didn't look away from her. People drifted into small conversations. Stories about my father surfaced in pieces. He fixed my roof during a storm, someone said. He refused to charge me, another added. He said a house should feel safe. I listened. Elena stood near the open doors, talking with Naomi about the native grasses she'd planted along the fence line. They'll look better next spring, she said. They need 1 full season to root. Naomi nodded. So do most things. Elena smiled slightly. When she caught me watching, she walked over. It turned out well, she said, glancing around. It did. You didn't rush it. I stopped trying to force it. She studied the beams again. Your father must have been a remarkable man. He was, I said. He taught me that the things worth building are the things you'd never let someone make small. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than strictly professional. That's rare, she said. So is this, I replied, looking around the barn. We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. Later in the evening, Vivian approached me quietly. Can we talk? We stepped outside into the cooling air. She moved, Vivian said. Colette. She nodded. Chicago. New job. Fresh start. I leaned against the railing. She asked about you, Vivian added carefully. What did you tell her? That you were doing well. That's accurate. Vivian hesitated. She's trying to figure herself out. I hope she does. You don't hate her. No. You don't miss her? I thought about that. I miss who I thought she was, I said finally. Not who she turned out to be. Vivian nodded, tears forming. I'm sorry. I know. When she went back inside, I stayed out for a moment. I felt something complicated in my chest. Not longing. Not regret. Grief. For a future that had never been real, only imagined. For a version of her that might have existed in a different story. I didn't wish her harm. I wished her honesty. With whoever came next. And with herself. Inside, Dean raised a glass. To the man who built this place, he said. Everyone lifted their cups. To Dad, I replied. The lights glowed warm above us. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just steady. People left slowly. Hugs. Handshakes. Promises to visit again. Eventually, the barn emptied until only the quiet remained. Lorraine lingered near the door. She pressed something into my hand. The key. The same key Dad had given her 30 years ago when the barn was just a storage shed and a plan. This key doesn't belong to a wedding, she told me the day I called off the ceremony. It belongs to this family. Keep it. I looked at her now. You sure? I asked. I've been sure for a long time, she said. She kissed my cheek and walked to her car. When the headlights disappeared down the drive, I was alone. I walked the length of the barn slowly. The beams. The floor. The lights. Everything intact. 6 months ago, I had almost let this place become the backdrop to a lie. I closed my eyes for a second and let the final words settle in me. She asked me for 2 years. 2 years to decide if I was worth choosing. I gave her my answer in 2 words, I'm done. And I kept the venue. Not for a wedding. Not for revenge. For something better, for the truth that some places are too sacred for people who don't understand what sacred means. My father built this barn with his hands. I almost let someone fill it with a lie. But the barn is still standing. And so am I. I stepped outside and pulled the doors closed. I turned the key in the lock, felt it click into place and smiled, because she wasn't the bride. She was never going to be. And the barn deserved better. So did I.